Welcome to The Explainer. Ever stop to think about what law is really made of? It's not just a bunch of rules in a book, it's a whole system, an entire architecture. And today, we're going to explore that blueprint from the ground up, from the philosophical foundations to the core principles that build the very society we live in. So, here's our plan for today. First, we'll lay the foundation by asking, what even is law? Then, we'll dig into 5 totally different philosophies that act as its bedrock. After that, we'll get into the actual building blocks, the language of the law, and the guiding principles that give it all shape. And finally, we'll tackle the big one. Why does any of this matter to us? All right, let's dive right in. Section 1. What is law really? We're starting with the very foundation of social order itself. We usually think of law as this very formal thing, right? Something passed by politicians or decided by a judge in a courtroom. But it's so much more than that. It's also the unspoken customs, the social norms, all those invisible rules that have developed over centuries. It's the whole complex system that allows us to live together, hopefully peacefully. Okay, now for the really fascinating part, the philosophical bedrock. It turns out there isn't just one single idea of what law is. Nope. For centuries, brilliant thinkers have been debating its true nature, and they've come up with some wildly different answers. Let's look at 5 of the big ones. First up, you have the natural law school. These guys believe that true law comes from some higher source, whether you call it God, nature, or just pure reason. The bottom line for them is this. If a law made by humans is fundamentally immoral or unjust, well then it's not really a valid law at all. And in the complete opposite corner, you have analytical positivism. These thinkers say, hold on, morality has nothing to do with it. For them, law is simply whatever a recognized authority, like a government, creates and can enforce. It's a command backed by force. If the state says it's a law and can make you follow it, then it's a law. Period. Then there's a totally different approach from the historical school. They argue that law isn't made by anyone. Instead, it just evolves. It grows organically out of a society's customs and traditions. They called this the Volksgeist, the spirit of the people. It's an idea that law is a lot like language. It just develops naturally over time. Now, the sociological jurists are a practical bunch. They see law as a tool, specifically a tool for what they call social engineering. The whole point of law, in their view, is to balance all the competing desires in a society, what individuals want, what the public needs, what different groups are fighting for, and to do it with as little conflict as possible. And finally, we get to the ultimate pragmatists, the legal realists. They say, forget all this high-minded talk about morality and history. The law is just a prediction of what a judge will actually do in a real-world courtroom. It doesn't matter what the rule book says. What matters is how it's actually applied by a person in a robe. And this is where you can see it all laid out side by side. It really highlights the fundamental conflicts, doesn't it? Is law about objective morals, or is it just about power? Why do we even follow it? Because it's the right thing to do, or because we're afraid of getting punished? Each of these schools of thought offers a completely different blueprint for building a society. Okay, so we've got our philosophical foundations. Now let's look at the actual building blocks, the core concepts that make up the language of law itself. So, a legal right isn't just some vague idea. It's actually a very precise structure with 5 specific parts. Think about your right to your own home. For that right to exist, you need 1. You, the holder. 2. Everybody else who has a duty not to barge in. 3. The content, which is you getting to use your home without interference. 4. The object, the house itself. And 5. The title, like the deed that proves you acquired the right. If one of those pieces is missing, the whole right kind of falls apart. Now, this brings up a really crucial distinction in law, possession versus ownership. They sound similar, but they're not the same thing at all. Possession is just having physical control over something. But ownership, that's the ultimate legal title. It's the full bundle of rights, the right to use it, sell it, even destroy it. Think about it. You can possess a rental car for the weekend, but you definitely don't own it. So what happens when someone's right gets violated? Well, that's where liability comes in. You can think of it as the legal glue that connects a wrongful act to a consequence. It's what creates that necessary bond between the person who did the wrong and the remedy for that wrong, whether it's paying for damages or facing some kind of punishment. All right, so we have the philosophical foundation and the conceptual building blocks. Now let's look at the architectural blueprint, those big guiding principles that give the whole legal system its purpose and its direction.
These 6 principles right here, they're like the pillars of our entire legal structure. They're the big goals that the system is trying to achieve. But here's the tricky part. They're often in tension with each other. I mean, think about it. How do you perfectly balance the liberty of one person with the need for equality for everyone? That's the kind of tough question the law is constantly trying to answer.
Let's just zoom in on one of those principles, equality. It's not as simple as it sounds. There's formal equality, which basically says we should treat everyone the same. But then there's substantive equality, which aims for an equal outcome. It recognizes that if we're all starting from different places, sometimes you have to treat people differently to make sure everyone actually gets a fair shot at ending up in the same place.
So, last section. Why does any of this stuff matter? We've got the philosophy, the language, the principles. Let's bring it all home and see how this abstract architecture actually shapes our very real day-to-day lives.
If you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Law is not some static, dusty old set of rules. It's a living, breathing, dynamic system. It's an ongoing and, yeah, sometimes messy conversation about how we want to organize ourselves as a society and how we strive to be better.
This quote from a jurist named Rudolf von Jhering just nails it. The law isn't just there to protect your individual desires or my individual desires. Its real job is to balance this whole complex web of interests, individual, public, and social, to make sure society as a whole can actually function. And that leaves us with one final thought. For you, if you are the architect, what would your blueprint look like? How would you balance liberty against equality? Which philosophy would you build your foundation on? As we've seen, there are no easy answers here, only choices. Thanks for joining us to explore the architecture of law.